Well, good evening and welcome to Creating Wealth in Small Multifamily Properties. And tonight's webinar is brought to you by My Core Intentions. I'm glad everybody's here tonight, and I certainly look forward to going through this presentation with you. You know, if you're a new investor, I think that you will get a lot of information here this evening. If you're a seasoned investor, this just might help you sharpen some tools that you currently have in your tool chest. But we're going to talk about several different things tonight. One of the things that I really like to focus in on is how we create short-term wealth and long-term cash flow, short-term cash flow and long-term wealth for our investors. You know, with multifamily, there's a real economies of scale. And we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the power of leverage and the power of strategy around this whole philosophy. So at the end, we'll have some opportunity for some question and answers. Let me give you a little bit of background on myself. You know, people say, how do you qualify for this? How come you can teach this? And well, I've been in the industry for about 3 decades. My background is in residential and commercial construction. Before I went into real estate, I did a number of fix and flips and buy and hold properties over the years. And then I went to residential sales, and I put a team together over a 12, 13-year period, and we were selling about 125 homes a year. And I tell you that not really to impress you, but just so that you understand, the average agent in the marketplace sells about 12 to 15 homes a year. So we were very productive in what we did. 2005, I went into, opened a small private equity business, and we raised about $18 million and bought $60 million in real estate, about 4,000 units in 5 different states. I've owned and operated thousands of units. I've actually had my hands in about $285 million worth of real estate transactions over the years. And today what I've done is I've taken all that knowledge and all that experience and I've put it on a training and coaching platform. And it's information that I want to share with people and help people to grow their own real estate portfolio and their own real estate experience. One of the things that I hope that by you coming here tonight, you're real clear on why that is. You know, why are you here tonight? What is your why in real estate? What are you trying to get out of real estate? You know, a lot of people say, well, I want to get rich or I want to make extra money. But what does that really mean? You know, if you're not crystal clear on where you want to go or what you want to achieve, how are you going to get there, right? And why real estate? Why not something else? Why not go and, you know, build a manufacturing plant or do something else? But why is it real estate? What's important? What's your passion around that? You know, people ask me a lot, why are you so passionate about real estate? Why do you like it so much? I said, because I can learn so much. There's no 2 deals that are the same. There's no processes that are the same. The strategies and the systems might be the same, but there's so many different things. So let me ask you this. What do you need to learn in order to gain your goals, in order to get where you want to get? So, you know, understand your why, set your goals, and understand how you're going to get there or what you need to do to get there. And those are all real important fundamentals of the real estate business. I like this quote. This was written by Gary Keller. Gary Keller wrote probably what I consider to be one of the best real estate investing books I've ever read. And that's called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Maybe you've read it, maybe you haven't, but I would suggest, especially if you're a newer investor, to pick that book up and read it because there's a real strategy behind it. But here's what he says. He says that financial wealth is the unearned income to finance your life mission without ever having to have to work again. Let me ask you, is this the wealth that you want? Or are you looking for something different? Is this just a way or a vehicle to help you get to where you want to go? You know, I interviewed a guy on my podcast last week, and he's been in the real estate investing space and does flipping of houses. And he's been doing that for about 5 years. Well, he's done about 195 flips in the last 5 years. Well, he's done 120 of those in the last 30 months. Now, it took him a while to build up, But once you get these systems in place, you can really start to finance what you're trying to accomplish in your life. This is why I really like real estate. Real estate is a great asset. It's a great alternative investment asset. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover 8 principles right now that really focus in on why real estate's such a good asset. People tend to invest in the stock market, mutual funds and bonds. They feel that that's enough for their future. But alternative investments like real estate help balance out your portfolio. Real estate offers 8 unique investing propositions that anyone can take advantage of. So first of all, it's accessible, right? It's everywhere you go. You drive to work in the morning, you drive by houses, buildings, structures. I remember being a kid growing up, asking my mom, who really has no idea about real estate, right? But asking her who owns big buildings, and she would always tell me insurance companies. And it was interesting because later on, as I started to get into the multifamily, the bigger multifamily space, and find out how many of those big properties insurance companies really do own, it's kind of it was an interesting answer back then. Real estate's appreciable. It goes up in value, right? It will just naturally go up in value, or we can force the appreciation. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute a little bit. It's rentable. You know, you hear a lot about other people's money and buying property with other people's money. But real estate being rentable and you use other people's money to pay off your mortgage, what a concept, right? It's improvable. You can go in, you can fix it up, you can make improvements. You know, we all have heard the expression value add. You can buy a value add property, put a bathroom in, put kitchens in, turn it around. You know, there's a real opportunity out there in the marketplace to buy 4, 6, 8 unit buildings and go in, renovate them, and do some high-end renovations to them and turn around and sell it. Now, that's kind of market specific, but I have really seen some guys do some tremendous things with some 6 and 8 unit buildings. So there's all types of opportunity out there. So real estate's appreciable, and I'm going to just talk about one of these 8 features tonight because they're so, you know, we could go in for hours into depth on each one of these, but it's appreciable over time. You know, if you looked at an XY axis where, you know, X went straight up and Y went across the bottom, and you drew a graph, you know, from the bottom corner up, you're going to see that that real estate goes up in value over time. If time's at the bottom and appreciation goes up the side, it just naturally grows. You know, if our economy grows at 3% a year, real estate should do about the same. So no matter how hard we try, we can't beat the clock. So time and appreciation are huge factors. They work together. And then there's forced appreciation. This is what I like to be able to do with my real estate. I like to be able to go into my real estate, buy something, force the appreciation. You know, a lot of people call it sweat equity, right? You may have heard that expression. But you can change the value either by upgrading the property or adding value to, you know, into the interior of the property. When you can raise rents, change tenants, this all adds to value. Overall value, one big factor is better management. Principles I like to talk about are standards. I want my investors and the people that I work with to set standards and guidelines that they walk through, and that's how they buy their real estate. That's how they operate their real estate. You know, I know of, I'm in the Chicago market, and I know of a builder in the Chicago market that does about 240 renovations every year. And he buys these properties from the banks, and he's been doing this for a number of years. So his system is everything he does is exactly the same. So he goes in all the paint is the same, all the bathroom fixtures, all the cabinets in the kitchen and the countertops are all the same, and he buys the same model property. You know, it's one of the things about urban markets, right, is in an urban market, the buildings all tend to be the same. So if he buys a 2-flat or a 3-flat, he can just do everything in the same fixtures, the same paint color. It saves cost, and it saves a lot of long-term headaches because of thinking of different things to do. But those are ways, you know, you build systems and strategies that you stick to that help you grow your portfolio. Another asset is that it is depreciation. You know, depreciation is a gift from the IRS, right? It's your ability for something to go up in value and for you to pay less taxes because the government devalued it. So here's what happens, right? With depreciation over time, the property increases in value. You can sell it for more money, but the government devaluates it, and which causes you to have a benefit on your taxes, on your personal income tax as a result of it. It's a gift from the IRS. When do you know the government to give you a gift? You might as well take it and enjoy it, right? Real estate is saleable. You know, I always talk about exit plan. I think exit plan is very important, but real estate is saleable. So there's a number of different ways you can sell real estate and get out of it. Here's what I always want people to know is, I don't care what the market's like. If it's a buyer's market, if it's a seller's market, real estate is saleable. If you price it right, it will sell. If you price it too high, you're going to sit on the market forever. So it's all about pricing. So if you buy something right and you exit it at a designated time and a designated price, you're going to be rewarded for that. It's leverageable. So the story I always tell is that if you wanted to go and buy $1 million in Google stock, you would have to spend $1 million. And what would you have? You would have $1 million in Google stock, right? But with real estate is leverageable. So if I want to buy $1 million in real estate, I don't need $1 million. I can leverage that. Let's just call it 25% down. So for $250,000 down, I can buy $1 million in real estate. So if I want to take $1 million and put 25% down, now I have $4 million worth of real estate. So that leverage gives you the ability to make more money. So because of leverage, you have the ability to increase your cash flow, and because you buy a bigger asset, it helps you to make more long-term wealth down the road, and it's livable. You know what? The big expression these days is house hacker, right? So buy a 2-flat, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit at the end. Buy a 2-flat or a 4-flat building, live in one of the units, rent the others out. This gives you a great experience as being a landlord, gives you great experience of operations and owning property. So let's talk a minute about what multifamily is. Multifamily is a residential building with one or more housing units in it, right? It's a multifamily building, also known as an MDU, multi-development, multi-dwelling. So why is multifamily so much more productive for an investment? The simple answer is it's economies of scale. An illustration of how this might work for you is that single family houses versus multifamily houses. So I had a small, and it really wasn't small, but I had a property management company, and I catered to single family homeowners, so that townhouses and condos. I managed about 140 properties. Well, they were scattered all over the city, right? So I had 140 roofs. But just picture this. Say you owned 100 homes, and underneath you had 100 roofs, 100 furnaces, 100 different tenants you had to deal with in 100 different locations. So what if you had to drive around and collect rent on all those places? It really can be stressful. But what if you owned a 100-unit apartment complex in one location? Maybe you only have 5 roofs. Maybe you only have 5 furnaces. You still have to collect 100 rents, but you know what? It's in one location. You can walk to everything. So the economies of scale give you a much more advantage. They give you a lot more opportunity to have your time be more productive. You know, the one thing that we can't ever get back is our time, right? And if we can be more productive, when we can operate in a space that gives us more opportunity, the better off that we can be and more productive we can be. So the economies of scale, you know, 100 single family homes versus 100 multifamily doors. Here's another thing that's really important is the expense ratio. So what I have found over the years is that the expenses on single family properties can range somewhere around 70 to 75% with all your running around and everything that goes into that. We can find that in your larger multifamily properties, your expenses are generally going to range around 50 to 55%. And your small multifamily properties, your expenses will tend to be around 30 to 40%, and they get closer to 30%. So the economies of scale are much simpler for you. It's clear with just those expense numbers, you make more money on the multifamily side, whether it's a small product or a big product, than you would on single family properties on itself. Let me just give you one example. So if you own a single family home and your mortgage payment is $1,200 and you're getting rent for $1,500, but a tenant moves out and you don't replace the tenant for a couple of months, really doesn't matter what your rent is because you are paying that $1,200 mortgage out of your own pocket, right? So now as a result of that, that creates a little bit of pain. Where if you have a 2-unit, a 3-unit, a 4-unit, and your mortgage is $1,200 and you're getting a couple rents for $900 or $1,000 or $1,200 each, depending on the market you're in and what your rents are, even if you are 10%, 20% vacant, you're going to have the opportunity to still pay all your bills and be less painful on your personal pocketbook. I want to talk about sizes of multifamily. When I talk about small multifamily, I talk about 2 to 4 units. This is a residential product. When we go 5 units or greater, now we're in the commercial arena. Some clear differences between residential and commercial. I want you to write this down though and think about this, because when we get into that commercial arena, you're going to have 3 different sizes as well. 5 to 25 units is typically small properties. 26 to 100 units gets us into the mid-range, and 101 and beyond puts us in large multifamily complexes. One thing I want to tell you that if you can close a 4-unit, a 20-unit, closing a 400 unit or a 250 unit is not that much harder. A little bit more work, a little bit more time consuming, but it's the same amount of work. Multifamily residential, I want to really focus in on that because I really am helping you to see how you can take these 2 to 4 unit products and create a portfolio for yourself. Picture if you were playing Monopoly, right? And you were on Boardwalk and they teach you to put 4 houses on Boardwalk, cash them in and put a hotel up, right? That's kind of what we're doing in this strategy. But 2 to 4 units, they're residential. They're small products. You can get a residential loan. There's an ease of acquisition. The negotiations are much easier. The financing is easier. Buying that product, and it's more accessible. Urban markets, suburbs outside of typical urban markets, this product is very accessible. I was actually out today looking at some units, and I did some recording on a couple of different streets that I was on, just looking at all the different 2, 3, 4 unit buildings up and down the street. Keep this in mind. A residential loan is a personal loan and it shows up on your credit. Commercial loans typically will go into an LLC and they are business loans. So there's a difference there as well, right? So you're going to be able to get a certain amount of residential loans depending on how many what banks you work with and things like that. And then the commercial loans, you can start to get into bigger product and buy more and finance more, leverage yourself more. Multifamily commercial is 5 units or more. The economies of scale are greater. You have a little bit more things that you need to pay attention to when you're negotiating contracts, when you are doing the due diligence. There's different types of inspections, financing. So it takes a little of the simplicity away that you typically find on the residential side, makes it just a little bit tougher. So there is a little bit of additional work, but with the education that you can put together from owning 5, 6, 8 small multifamily units and starting to gradually increase from there, you can really get the education that you need. I want to talk about funding. Now, on the residential side, you have an FHA loan. So you could buy a small multifamily product with an FHA loan if you're going to live there yourself. It's got a very low barrier to entry, a low down payment, and I'm going to show you a graph as we get into a couple more slides on how this will work for you and how your cash flow would work for you. But I always encourage a new investor who's just starting to get their feet wet, who doesn't own any real estate yet. And, you know, a question that people often ask is, should I buy a single family house or should I just buy a, you know, apartment building? Well, you know what? Buy a multi-unit apartment building, a small one, live in one of the units, get your feet wet, learn how this whole process works. And that's where you really start to grow, is from there, from that education. I'm an advocate for education, and what else can you learn? Then there's traditional funding or financing. You're going to see down payments somewhere between 10 to 20%, depending on local bank, regional bank, typical lender, national bank. Everybody has separate guidelines, different guidelines. You're going to see conventional loans. Your typical standard conventional loan will be 20% down. Then there's creative funding, creative financing. You know, I am a creative kind of guy. I have put together a number of deals over the year, no money down, creative financing, owner holds the paper, master leases. There's so many different types of opportunities, so many different ways to buy property using creative financing. You know, you could go into loans and have the owner participate, the seller participate with you and help, you know, create an easier sense of closing. And then the commercial properties. If you're a buy and hold investor, you may want to look at a fixed rate debt. So when we get into the bigger properties, there's different types of financing, there's different types of debt. If you're a flipper, you might want to look at a floating rate, right? Where you can get into a property where the rate is lower, and over time that rate's going to go up. You know, I teach a short 3-week study course on funding and straight talk on financing. And I will, you know, have that offered for people who may have an interest in getting a better idea on that product. So these are the steps that I suggest, you know, people take a look at and that they work on building their portfolio. And especially new investors, you get in the business, you know, networking and team building is very important. You know, how do we build that? How do we build that team? What's the strength of their team? What does that look like in those people around us? How about locating and sourcing deals? Do you know how to do that? Are you efficient at it? And how do we teach you how to be able to source, find, and pick up deals a lot easier? And have multiple opportunities to pick up. Evaluate properties and offers to purchase. How do we evaluate a deal from the minute we look at it and look at that small offering that we get, an MLS sheet or a broker offering, to putting in an LOI, letter of intent, to purchasing the building, to closing on it, to the operations, the inspections and the evaluations along the way. And one point that I really think is very important, and that's exit planning. And really, exit planning should be at the top of this list, because I don't believe that we should buy any real estate unless we know how we're going to get out of it. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years teaching people how to buy how to invest in real estate. And I've always walked away from seminars and coaching and training kind of being left dismayed, because nobody ever really talked about getting out of the deal. And getting out of a deal is much more than just selling it, right? There's multiple ways of exiting a property, exiting a deal, and still keeping control and ownership. But being able to get capital out of it, being able to bring partners in, there's different ways. But what you need to do is be able to take a deal that you're going to buy and pencil the exit plan out from the beginning. Go to Starbucks, write it on a cocktail napkin. Decide what you're going to do, when you're going to sell it, how much your profit's going to be, what you have to do along the way. That exit planning is what keeps us making money. You know, they say you make money going into real estate, and that's true, but you don't realize the money. You don't realize the profit till you exit the deal. And that's where the important stuff really happens. Deal evaluation. This is a little class I teach, and we talk about the 5 traps. What are those traps that we can run into when we look at a deal? One of the first things I want to talk about is don't ever fall in love with a deal. There's nothing worth getting in a relationship with a deal, getting married to a deal, and then not being able to get out of it. So keep your emotions out of it. Conversations with the broker, how do we handle those? What's the special pricing? How do we look at that? Exit planning, underwriting, and due diligence. These are all to help you grow and do that deal evaluation more thoroughly so that you know exactly what you're buying and how to operate it along the way. So let's start to take a look at some opportunities and how things might look. This first one is a 2-unit acquisition, and you're going to live in one of the units as a owner. You're going to get a traditional mortgage. You're going to put 20% down. So I'm saying that this building is average price maybe $200,000. Now, different markets, the pricing is different. I understand that. I mean, we've looked at products in Southern Illinois. That product can be $100,000 a door. I've looked at products in different markets around the country, and it can be $50,000 a door. So there's different pricing in different markets, but just be aware of that. So I'm just going to kind of use a general Midwest kind of pricing. So if we use $200,000 for a 2-unit building, you put 20% down, that's $40,000 down. You have about 3% closing costs for $6,000. And it leaves you a mortgage balance of $160,000. Let's just say you could get a 4% interest rate. You might be able to do a little lower than that today, the way the economy is. But that principal and interest payment is going to be about $533 a month. Your taxes, if we said that the taxes were $2,800, your taxes, property taxes, would be $233 a month. Your insurance, $150. Your out-of-pocket expenses are $917 for your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on that building. If you have a renter living in one of the units for $1,000 a month, you would be in a positive cash flow position. Not a lot, but a little bit just to put on the side and do some repairs. But you're not paying a mortgage, are you? So really, it is a good, profitable position to be in at this point. Now you have other people paying your mortgage payment, paying for your real estate that you own, and paying for your portfolio that you're building. Here's what a rental would look like if you moved out of that building and you rented both units. You have 1 unit, and our typical 2-flat in the area that I'm in might be a 2-bedroom unit on the first floor and a 3-bedroom unit on the second floor. So I'm saying on the second floor, I can get a little bit more money than the first floor unit, right? So I'm getting $1,000 a month rent and $900 a month rent, and then extra income. Extra income might be things like late payment fees, or maybe a parking fee, or maybe some storage fees, or something of that nature. So my annual gross income is $23,400 a year. If I have a 10% vacancy factor, and you know what, a lot of people say, hey, you know what, when you buy a property, you don't have to put a vacancy factor in there. If you have a single family home or small multifamily, vacancy doesn't matter, but it does matter. Be aware of it, put it in there, because if you look at a worst case scenario, anything better than that, you're in a good position. Your effective gross income, which is a multifamily process that you come up with, you take all your income less your vacancy, and that gives you an effective gross income. That's before your expenses and before your debt service. Your expenses, we're going to use 30%. For the year would be $8,000, $8,400. Leaves you an NOI, which is net operating income. Your net operating income is all your income in, all your expenses out before your debt service. That leaves you $12,000 a year. Well, if your mortgage payment, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance at $917 a month, right, is $11,004 a year, that leaves you in a positive cash flow position annually of $1,632. Now, those numbers can be massaged any way that you look at them. You might have less repairs, you might put less money on the side, you might get more rent, you might get less rent, you might not have any vacancy, you might not have any other income. But I'm just showing you a scenario here that is an average scenario that works and puts you in a positive cash flow position. Plus, out of that 30%, one of the factors, and here I'm going to show you the expenses, right? So this is where the 30% came up. Landscaping, you have $100 a month. Your common area utilities, you have $100 a month. Maintenance and upkeep, you're putting $175 a month on the side. That tenant moves out, you need to go in there and put a new coat of paint on, or maybe fix something up. You've got the money put on the side for it. If you never have to do anything, then that's banked money that you have. In a typical multifamily in the market I'm in, you're going to see water and sewer bill of around $150 a month. That's what you're going to pay as an owner. So those total expenses are $525. Like I said, those could get massaged any way that works in your scenario. But you can see how you can start to become profitable. All right, so now what I want to talk about is if you are a 2-unit owner buying a building using FHA financing. So we're going to use the same scenario, that $200,000 building. But as an FHA owner, and you're going to own or occupy that property, if you put 4% down, that's $8,000. Closing costs of 3%, $6,000, leaves you a mortgage balance of $192,000. So with a 4% interest rate, you can already see that your mortgage payment is higher than it was in the other scenario. It's $640 a month. Taxes were $2,800 still, insurance the same. Your payment now is $1,023. So you're getting income or rent on that other unit of $1,000 a month, puts you in a positive cash flow position of $23, and you live in the building. Now, what I want to share with you is that 4%, there's a lot of ways that you don't have to, could do this deal with not having any money out of your pocket. So let's talk about creative financing for a minute. So owner could participate. You could ask the owner to pay points, would come off some of the closing costs, right? You could ask the owner for cash back to help cover your down payment. But what's really interesting is Illinois has some grant programs and some home buyer programs that will save you that $8,000. I know that there's a program in one of the counties here in Northern Illinois that you could ask for a grant, for a home buyer grant. They'll give you that $8,000. If you live in the property for 2 years, you don't have to pay it back. So you've just bought this building, virtually no money out of your own pocket. You live in it, and it's a positive cash flow position. I know every market in the country, every city in the country has some type of a program. You might not get the same amount in every market, but there are programs that help first-time home buyers, and not even first-time home buyers, but somebody who hasn't bought a home for 2 years, 3 years. They have these different programs. So check with your village, check with a local broker who you've put on your team, check with your lender who you've put on your team, and make sure you ask enough questions to research those products because they're out there. So here's what I want to look at. I want you to look at. There's a magic in this, right? So let's say that over 3 to 5 years, you were to buy 8 buildings. Look at the magic that happens here. You start to accumulate cash flow and value. If you bought 8 buildings over 5 years because you were able to buy a building, increase the value, go in, refinance it, pull some cash out, go buy another building, save some more money, buy another building, and build that portfolio over time, you're making $13,000 a year in cash flow. You have a value of $1.6 million. This doesn't include any depreciation. It doesn't include any appreciation. This doesn't include any of the other asset value building finances that you can derive from multifamily properties. So within this, there is a lot of value and a lot of creed to building your future wealth in your portfolio. The magic's in the execution. You can have the best deal, you can have all the capital in the world, you can have the best market, but you need the execution. I've seen some of the greatest business plans fail because the people who were executing the plan couldn't get it done for one reason or another. So make sure that you plan your execution. Make sure that you know exactly when the rehabs are going to happen, when the fix-ups are going to happen, when the tenants need to move out. Make sure your operations are in place, because the magic is in the execution. And this is what I like to work with people on. This is what I like to help coach people through, is teaching them how to build their portfolio, how to build their rental legacy and leave a legacy for their family. So I really want to emphasize that point, and help you get razor sharp on your execution so that you can execute along the way. I can take somebody who's never invested in real estate and help them in the first 9 to 12 weeks do their first deal, and over a 3 to 5 year period help them create wealth for themselves that'll be generational wealth for their family. So what I want to do now is I want to open it up for any questions that anybody might have. Hopefully I'll be able to do this. Actually,
can you hear me for a question?
I can, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, this is great. I learned a lot from this. You talked about if you could do a 2 or 4 unit deal, and the difference between, a 100 unit deal or 200 unit deal is not much different, just a little more time. How do you compare buying a single family house to buying a small multifamily property in terms of complexity and time required?
Actually, Tony, if we're in the residential arena, it's really about the same complexity. It's not any more difficult to go buy a 4 unit than it is to buy a single family home or a townhome. Your contracts are the same. Your funding is the same. Your inspections are a little bit more complex because you have more units, and rather than just one, you might have, 2 or 3 kitchens or 4 or 5 bathrooms versus, and you could have 3 or 4 bathrooms in a single family house too. But the complexity is about the same, and the closing is about the same, and funding on the residential side there's a simplicity to that today.
All right, super. Thank you.
That help?
Sure does. Thank you.
Okay. If anybody has a question, I think you can raise your hand as a attendee where you're at, and I can unmute you and allow you to talk. Okay, if somebody's got a question and they don't want to be recognized, you could go to chat and put it in the chat box. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad everybody was here this evening. One of the things is what's the next step? I think there's a couple of next steps. Like I said earlier, I teach a smart money course and a deal evaluation course. I teach people how to evaluate a property, whether it's small multifamily or single family, like Tony talked about. If you're doing an investment transaction, investment in real estate, there's different ways to do that. And I have a coaching program. I actually have a 3-tier coaching program that starts as low as $2,000 a year for a 12-month coaching program. It's actually ridiculous. But what it does is it will help people to build their confidence and their knowledge around real estate investing and help them to get into the business and have good execution. And one of the things that I really focus on with people is balanced lifestyle. I really feel that in real estate, we have the ability to get out of balance way too often. And that by having a more balanced lifestyle in real estate, it helps our family life. It helps just our general overall life run a little bit smoother. So here's how you can reach me if you have any interest or have any questions that you want to talk about. If I can help in any way, my phone number, or you can go to my website, send me an email, I should put my email address on here. It's mike@mycoreintentions.com. I run a podcast every Tuesday at 12 o'clock Central Time. And we interview typically a multifamily guy or a property management person or somebody in the real estate investing arena, somebody to talk about wealth building, somebody to talk about asset protection. So we run some pretty good webinars. So we have a couple other events coming up. I just want to touch real quick that on August 6th, we're going to have a free event coming up. Myself and a close friend of mine are partnering, Carl Moose, the focus guy. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about real estate investing. It'll be a good 90-minute program. So watch for that in your email. I'm glad everybody was here tonight. Thank you for being here. And like I said, if I can help in any way, don't hesitate to give me a call. Good night, everybody.